Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 5 of DC Startup Week. We're so excited to have you here. I see people coming off the waiting room and joining in. A couple folks are connecting to audio. So I'm so excited to be here. I'm coming to you live from WeWork here in downtown DC. My name is Rachel Koretsky. I'm one of the organizers of DC Startup Week, and my full-time is being a tech founder myself. I am the founder and CEO of Ubase. I'm so excited that every year in September we put on DC Startup Week, a 5-day event packed of sessions and talks, and we really wouldn't be able to do it without the support of our sponsors, but particularly our title sponsors that we have here with us today of Next, powered by Shulman, Rodgers, Insperity, Technology Rivers, and Wiz. We're so grateful and so thankful because of your support is the reason why we're able to have DC Startup Week and make it accessible to all and ensure that it's completely free. That's something we're extremely proud of. So I want to say how grateful and how thankful we are to have you here today. On the chat, if you have any questions, can you just type all question, all in caps, so that way it's easy for Anthony, the moderator, to be able to point them out throughout the conversation for today. I'm excited to welcome you to today's Lunch and Learn session around choosing the right partners to ensure that you're able to have success. Please join me in welcoming Anthony Millin. He is the chair of Next, which is powered by Shulman Rodgers. We have Tanya Wagstaff, who is a business performance advisor at Insperity. We have Ghazenfer Mansoor. He's a CEO of Technology Rivers. And last but not least, we have Mark Brenner. He is the CEO and co-founder of West Technology, which is also Wiz. So thank you so much, and please join me in welcoming them to the DC Startup Week stage.
Great, thank you so much, Rachel. We are all really excited to be here today, and as you mentioned, really excited and honored to, as a group, be title sponsors of DC Startup Week, which we all believe is one of the most significant and important weeks of the year for the DC startup ecosystem. So thank you to DC Startup Week and your whole team in putting this week together. And thanks to everybody who is joining us today. We have Ghazenfer and Mark and Tanya, and maybe before we start getting into the content of our discussion, I will ask each of you, starting with Mark and then Tanya and then Ghazenfer, to just introduce yourself and your company. I'll give a brief introduction on Next, and then we'll get started with our discussion. So Mark, if you could lead us off.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Brenner. I'm co-founder and CEO of West Technologies, which is a subsidiary of a significant accounting firm called Wiz & Company. As background, I am primarily a serial entrepreneur, founded 3 companies and ran them to exits, raised anywhere from 8 to 40 million. And 2 of those companies did become billion-dollar companies after my watch. Signed up with Wiz to create a product and service to help early stage companies be investor ready and have success, what we call a return on their hard sacrifice.
Great, thank you. Tanya?
Hi everybody, good afternoon. My name is Tanya Wagstaff and I am a business performance advisor within Insperity. In my role, I work with business owners like you, industry leaders and chief executives to escalate your business position in the market, maintain a competitive edge, and ensure sustainable growth and profitability. About Insperity, we are the industry-leading human capital management firm designed to help small business better align their people strategy. We're able to provide that large corporation protection and buying power and benefits that are otherwise only available to large corporations. So we'll talk more about HR in a bit, but I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you, Tanya. Ghazenfer?
Hi, everyone. My name is Ghazenfer Mansoor. I'm the CEO of Technology Rivers. My own background is technology. So we're talking about the product development. So I'll mention some of my background as well. So I worked with 2 startups as an early engineer, and then later had my own startup before starting Technology Rivers 5.5 years ago, where we are helping customers building innovative products. We work with entrepreneurs, product owners, startup founders, and help them create innovative products.
Great, thank you. So just briefly about myself, I've been a serial entrepreneur. I've co-founded several companies. I'm a partner in a seed stage venture capital fund focused in the urban tech space called Urban Us. And as Rachel mentioned, I chair Next, powered by Shulman Rodgers, which is Next is an innovative new model for delivery of legal services for the full life cycle of startup and emerging growth companies. At Next, we offer predictable legal fees through more than 75 fixed price packages and service bundles designed for startups. Our clients receive direct advice from Next senior attorneys through a high-touch, hands-on legal service model. And we also integrate technology platforms comprised of NASDAQ, Carta, UShare, and other best-of-breed tools for a collaborative, transparent, and efficient client-centric experience. And for more information on Next, you can visit us at www.next.law. So on to our topic today, which is increase your chances for success in terms of choosing the right partners. And, just to set the stage, one of the critical factors in the success of a startup is the team. And technology may change, markets may change, capital needs may change, but the ability to continue to execute and deal with successes and challenges, both ones that you expect and ones that are unanticipated, come down to the team. And the team is broken down into the management team. You have a corporate board of directors, an advisory board, but also part of that team are key service providers in areas such as legal, accounting and financial services, healthcare benefits, and technology. And this group of service providers is really the fourth component of what comprises a team. And that's what we're going to focus on today. So the first question for discussion by the panel is that I'd like to talk about. And the first topic is, how do you see yourself as a partner in your client's success beyond just the role of being a service provider? We really talk about being this partner in the long-term success of clients that you work with. And so maybe we'll start with Mark and kind of work, and then just go to Tanya and Ghazenfer, but just to talk about how you see yourself as a partner in the success of your clients.
Thanks, Anthony. So with WIS, I mentioned earlier, return on sacrifice. That's our mantra. That means that we're trying to get the outcomes that entrepreneurs deserve for their hard work and sacrifice in the early days. That means helping raise their probabilities of getting funded. It means helping them with their numbers and maintaining good relationships with investors, and allowing them to have accounting and financial support all the way through till exit. Again, we do this in a few different ways. One is that we'll take over your numbers. You'll make sure they're right, make sure they're seamless with tax, make sure there's not any mistake made on the compliance side. At the same time, we have what we call an investor readiness platform. This has a variety of capabilities that will alert you based on your numbers to opportunities and challenges, as well as access a whole ecosystem of help, people like the folks on this call that can come in and provide additional services for you. So we have a very holistic program that at the end of the day, you will look to your investors like a 5 to 10% top operator if you sort of stay on the platform and the cadence that we design.
Great, thank you. Tanya?
I spent close to 15 years in the back office and held executive leadership roles in finance and HR. And, one of my non-negotiable understanding with my teams then was that, when it comes to payroll or health insurance, when employees call and on these and have questions, when my team is reviewing timesheets and processing pay, everything else stops. And that becomes a top priority. I'm protective of my employees and I'm sensitive to their needs. now in my role, take that to the next level of next levels, where I am now, the partner of business owners, CEOs and CFOs. A whole lot of money is at stake. Reputations, and hundreds of families, communities now depend on that success. I see Insperity and I in a very important role. You can email me, call me in my cell, it doesn't matter what time or what day it is. It's important because what's at stake, as I've mentioned, is huge. I am my client's biggest advocate, and trust me, in situations where it requires recentering, having that honest conversation, we have that too. But here's the difference, I am their trusted advisor. I have earned it by demonstrating genuine care, the quality of work, and accessibility. And these are values you'll find across the board with Insperity, because we think about it, we have a retention rate of somewhere between 86 to 88%. We have thousands of clients, and we're in the service industry. That's a pretty big deal.
Great, thank you. Ghazenfer, in terms of kind of how you see yourself as a long-term partner in the success of your clients.
Okay, so technology is one of the most important part in most of the startups, and having the right product is the key. So one of the key things we focus on is making sure the customer is building the right product. You don't want to build something and then, okay, you build a beautiful product and then you realize 6 months down the road, oh, this is not what my customer wants. So that emphasis is from the very beginning. So we invest our time and make sure we understand the customer vision, what they're looking for, who are their competitors, and helping them build a product that is created as per their vision. Because otherwise, we have seen many of those projects where companies have spent months and months build a product, but then you realize that's not the one that customer really want. So we really focus on the product development. And secondly, as they're building, we're also help them on introductions and on the growth strategy, because these are also as part of the technology. Because as you're building, many things are inherent in the technology part. If you are focusing on just one thing, it's not going to help you in overall product development.
So in terms, we've talking about now how you guys are partners in the long-term success of your clients. And when we're picking partners in business, it's and you're investing in somebody who's going to have that kind of impact on our companies as founders. What I would like to kind of talk about now is a little bit around what to look for. What advice would you give founders in selecting a service provider in your area of expertise? What are the kind of common pitfalls to avoid? It can be overwhelming. I know when I was involved in my days of being an entrepreneur and building companies, you suddenly need a number of different service providers to help you, and it can be overwhelming at that stage to have to make those kinds of decisions. So I'd like to just turn now to what advice would you give our listener entrepreneurs today about selecting service providers and how to find the right one with the right fit for them. And I kind of open it up to anyone who'd like to start.
Okay, I'll start. So I'll ask everyone to, if you get a chance to read my interview with the DC Week. I think it's shared on the program. So this is one of the main questions that answer how to avoid the pitfalls when you're hiring an outside company. As part of the outsourced product development company, we help numerous companies, and there are common patterns that we have seen. And one of the most important one is that it goes back to one of my original one is the product development. When you are looking for a company, make sure you work with a company who really understand the product development part. That's more important than just hiring the programmers. So I call the programmers are like workers. They're one part of the whole house building thing. So you may have a beautiful house, but what if that doesn't have a bathroom at the main level, something like that. So you may not be able to use it. So that part is really key. You want to work with a company who understands, who help you. Secondly, when you are hiring company, make sure you ask the right questions when you're asking, when you're talking to the references. It's, remember, companies are giving you the names of the companies who will talk good about them. It's up to you to find out what is the right question and how do you dig into the details about what is right or wrong. Most important part, another one is making sure the companies have built scalable applications, complex applications, because you need to have to have a strong foundation of your application. If, as you're growing, if the foundation is not strong, that means you have to re-spend time and money to build something again. You want to work with a company who have worked with the companies of your size and who have helped others grown from your size to grow. If you're a startup, which most of the companies here are, you want to see somebody who helped at a very early stage, from seed to angel to Series A, because they have those experiences, not only at your level, but also at the level, and help you take from one stage to another one. These are very critical one, because companies have experience at different level. That doesn't mean if somebody has worked with the government, that doesn't mean they'll be able to provide you the same solution. And I think lastly, I would say, make sure you look at the hidden cost that comes with the service provider. These are the most critical one, because you don't want to get into where you build a product and then you realize you need to pay a lot more things just to get to the finish line.
Great, thank you. Mark or Tanya, would you like to add to that?
I'll jump in. We're in the accounting finance area, so I'll just point out 3 things for the group. Number one is there is a difference between bookkeeping and accounting. Most people don't understand that. Bookkeeping does not translate well into things like tax or when you scale. And so you're always hearing these horror stories about how simple bookkeeping doesn't match up when companies come to like WIS and want to do a tax return or an audit. And so starting off with some level of sophistication is a good thing. The second thing is scale. And like Next and WIS have set up these little early stage entities that act like jet skis off the mothership, but you can still access the mothership for complex issues. In our world, it might be GAAP accounting or deferred revenue recognition or sales tax. So you can get very nimble early stage services while at the same time being able to scale up. And so you want to be able to not have to switch accounting firms each time you go from Series C to Series A to Series B if you can afford it. There are different needs that happen along the way. And then the last piece I'd look for is connectivity. Most entrepreneurs don't have a ton of relationships into money and other service providers, and understanding what the entrepreneur needs. Hopefully people have been entrepreneurs, and helping to get to money and get to the things that you need is really critical.
Great, thank you.
For HR, when it comes to HR outsourcing, I have a fairly quick list. Check licensing and accreditation. Assess the company's financial strength and security. Do they have the resources to deliver on the promises they've given you? Research on the company's history. What is truly their expertise? Many of these companies start out as one thing, and because of these captured clients, they've kind of stretched their arms around HR. But HR is very, there's a whole lot of things that goes with HR. So if you're just looking for plain payroll, then go with a payroll company. But if you're looking for a whole HR approach, obviously payroll is not going to be enough. An insurance company by itself is not going to be enough. So you want to make sure you understand what's truly their history and what got them successful. And then, what is their staff support ratio? Ask to meet the team, ask their tenure too. If you ask their tenure, you get a good idea of, how well they're taken care of in their own companies, are they valued? You get a good idea of the culture of this partner you want to establish a relationship with. And then lastly, as what, my partners here have mentioned, it's important for a startup is a service model scalable. If you want to grow, sure, that's a positive problem. I always call it positive problem because, as with growth, there are challenges that comes with growth. But if you also have to downsize, which we've seen that unfortunately during this last couple of months with COVID, what does that mean financially and in terms of resource? So.
Great, thank you. And I'll kind of add to that a little bit from the legal side in terms of what you would want to look for when you're bringing on an attorney in the startup space. And some of it is very similar to what you've heard in these other areas, but you definitely want to know that you're working with somebody who's been in the startup space, who understands the space. It has its own pulse, its own metrics, its own way of doing things. So kind of having somebody who really understands that and has had a lot of experience working with startup and emerging growth companies. Another thing you want to really be able to find is hiring somebody who can operate at the speed of startups. There is a pace to the startup ecosystem in terms of how rapidly things happen, how rapid response times need to be, iterations of matters that you're working on. And so really knowing that that kind of pace of a startup is kind of matched by the attorney or law firm that you're working with. The next thing is you really want to know that you're going to have a lot of accessibility, and accessibility to senior level guidance is another really important component. You're making so many decisions early on in your company's life cycle that can have really significant impact later on as you're growing. And so having accessibility when you need it, and also accessibility to guidance and decision-making points and counseling from very experienced people is something else you want to ask about. You don't want to just be kind of handed off to very junior people and not see the senior attorneys after you're engaged, because you really need that guidance early on. You want to, Mark touched on this, but it's another important thing in picking your law firm is just connectivity and the ability to kind of connect you with senior executives. And as you're looking for key hires and employees, they have that network. They have that network to other service providers, and they have that network to investors that they're able to make introductions to is another core area. So those are some of the really important things in picking a law firm. So now we've kind of picked the firm. The next thing I'd like to touch on a little bit is there's been significant changes in our world since COVID, and there's a lot of people now working remotely, a lot of service providers in your different fields working remotely. The founders and entrepreneurs are running these distributed companies. And so there's been a lot of change in the way people work and interact with their service providers. And it would be great just to hear some of your experiences as to how COVID has impacted the way you work with your clients, what's working, what's better than it was before, what's challenges that you're now experiencing that you didn't experience before, but just to kind of understand the impact of COVID on you and the way you're able to partner and work with your clients. Maybe you want to start off this time for us, Tanya?
Sure. You know what? COVID put a spotlight on HR. It really did. And we've been very, very busy. We were taking calls and giving our clients guidance when no one knew what to do and how to protect their employees' health, and at the same time maintain, the privacy of the employees who were sick and tested positive with COVID. As with everybody else, in terms of the way we work, transitioning to majority of, well, almost all of our meetings being virtual, that's one. But I think in terms of how we communicate with our clients, that hasn't changed. As a matter of fact, because of the need, the volume has increased a lot. We've been in the forefront with a lot of the legal side and regulation when it comes to what COVID brought to the business market. We were giving guidance and policy support to many of our clients who, like everybody else, transitioned to remote workforce. And specifically now became a location independent employer, which is great. This means that they can now hire talent wherever the talent is. But the con of that, is them now being subject to laws and regulations in those states, cities, and municipalities that, are new to them. Regulation when the CARES Act was approved that Friday, the immediate Tuesday morning, we had a nationwide webinar for all our clients to educate them in what the CARES Act is. And then that very afternoon, we were able to produce reports right away that our clients could take to their banks, so they could be front in line with that PPP and take advantage of the benefits of the Paycheck Protection Program and EIDL. So long story short, what's emerged from the pandemic was the HR gap present in many businesses who thought that they had their HR together. So.
Great. Mark and Ghazenfer?
Yeah, so certainly 2020 was a wild ride in the accounting finance space with entrepreneurs. It was really a good time to work through and problem solve together. We had to drop everything and get everybody focused on cash flow and runway, and then get them connected to PPP and idle loans, and then work with companies like Insperity to sort of take advantage of the situation as best we can to survive and thrive. Coming out of COVID, or we're not actually out of it, but in this process, things are picking up, and a lot of the funding strategies, are and discussions require more thought than normal. Certain companies and industries that are kind of benefiting from COVID, need to sort of move into the market more quickly. Others, maybe need to fall back on friends and family. So there's been a lot of interesting discussions around runway and funding strategy there. And the last thing I'll say is that certainly we're big in-person people in terms of, getting to know our clients in a very meaningful way and talking about a variety of issues. I do feel the remote's working fine. I mean, we'll still probably try to do some in person. We have a technology platform that I mentioned earlier that assists on sort of keeping track of milestones and alerting to challenges and opportunities. And so that's become more important, with less personal touch, to be able to use technology to sort of create the discipline that the investors are going to want to see to be successful.
Thank you, Mark. Ghazenfer, do you have anything you'd like to add to that? Just in terms of
absolutely. So we are all remote company. There are obviously ups and downs we have seen in COVID. We lost some projects, but overall our work increased tremendously. We added even 2 other countries in our list. So we are in the 6 countries now. We have the developers in Pakistan, Argentina, Uruguay, Dominican Republic, Philippines, and in the US. So, and 3 of those countries are added during the COVID time. So we see that during this time opens up more opportunities for entrepreneurs. There were some companies that were always hesitant with the remote work. Now that opens up, they're forced to be remote. So now that's opened up more opportunities for businesses like ours. And especially in IT, it's much easier. We do see some challenges where a lot of people in our team that were all sitting in one office doing the work, and now suddenly everybody has to be remote. But that also brings a good for us, because that forces us to implement some of the processes that we were supposed to do before, but it was just dragging. Now, COVID forced us to do many of those things. a lot more collaboration, a lot more write-up stuff that was previously in those just the meetings. So overall, we see that COVID helped us more positively and our customers.
I think you're really seeing so many entrepreneurs early on run distributed teams and kind of live in an environment where they're nimble and are able to do that. And I think it's been very interesting and become very important when you're looking at service providers that you're working for that can kind of really support you in that kind of distributed work environment. And so on the legal side, we've set up a very strong technology platform that we mentioned for collaborating and communicating with clients in a distributed fashion. And so I do think you're seeing a lot more investment in kind of in the infrastructure to support clients with that type of remote access workload. Are you guys seeing in your own firms that kind of investment in continued investment or accelerated investment in technology to really help support and collaborate and interact and increase the kind of client focus of what you're doing for clients?
Certainly. And along that line too is also cybersecurity, right? We've done a lot of, I've seen so many upgrades, and it's just also to protect the data, to protect, environments such as this when we're having virtual meetings. But yeah, definitely in investments in that line.
Yeah, WIS has invested several $1 million in technology and sort of early stage process to help these early stage companies raise their probability of success and stay on track and be more disciplined and attractive to investors. So yeah, we've made a big bet in this area that it's necessary because there's a combination of service and technology that's kind of required. If we just hand entrepreneurs technology, most of them are too busy and they won't comply. But at the same time, the service, especially as Anthony mentions, in a distributed network where things are going all over the place, needs some structure and framework on the technology front.
How, in terms of this component that you touched on in terms of so many different pieces that are moving forward for entrepreneurs, when you're building companies, you don't think in silos, right? Every core business milestone triggers needs across kind of multiple spectrums of services that you need. So for instance, if somebody hits a big milestone of hiring an employee, it triggers across a broad spectrum of technology needs and accounting needs and payroll needs and legal needs. How would you advise and see service providers kind of breaking through these silos, and how do you see entrepreneurs managing a process of multiple service providers that they're working with to really have a more holistic solution to the problems that they're working on, so that it's not as if they solve it from a legal perspective, but then they have an accounting issue that's created? How do you recommend that they work with different providers in a more holistic approach?
Well, I can start. I mean, again, I'm referring back to the technology platform, but part of what our technology platform does is it looks at the numbers, and then based on those numbers are able to source opportunities and challenges that an entrepreneur might be missing or not paying attention to, and then immediately also allows them to connect to another service provider to get that help as needed. And then we have a monthly meeting cadence, so the accountant has to clear that opportunity or challenge. So we know that they've seen it, they've discussed it, and either action's been taken or it's kind of archived away. But at least we're not missing critical things as we're sort of as we're moving along. And then we are just starting to work on how we connect with people like on this call, where we can kind of alert each other rather than just sort of alerting us. So that's where we're trying to go here.
Thanks, Mark. Tanya, do you find, like, when you're working on the HR side, but how you help your clients make sure things are being coordinated across the different areas that are triggered by activities that are happening in the HR space?
Sure. Here's what we typically find, and it is what it is. Nothing good or bad about it, but when you're launching a company, many founders kind of think of HR as, I'm not hiring anybody right now anyway, so I don't need to put anything in place. So unless you are 100%, 110%, 120% confident that you're going to be a solo entrepreneur, it's always good to plan for that, promise of growth, right? And so when it comes to launching a company, HR should be there. Your people plan should be there. Building and designing the culture and building it with intent. Like, what's this going to be like? What I want my employees to experience when they're part of my organization. Building your employer brand. And when I talk about employer brand, it's the like of the Googles of the world. Microsoft, you name all these big companies, and you have these college students, high school students, and say, you know what, I want to work there. And they don't even know anything about benefits and what it is to work, but somehow they've heard it's a great company to be a part of. That's employer brand for you. So building that employer brand, what's the word out there about your company, and kind of, again, designing that with intent. And then benefit strategy. You don't want to be at a place where next thing you know, you had this viral in your social media, you've got clients left and right, and it's a chicken or the egg. So and we all know talent out there is competitive in the marketplace. So building that benefit strategy, what would it take for the talent out there to go join your company? And then when you do get to that hiring of the first, your first set of employees, is, job description. It's not just a piece of paper, to be honest with you. Everybody thinks, oh, job description, and just put something to paper. But when you think about it, the job description should be written and be aligned with the company's goal. And so be careful with that. Want to make sure that kind of everybody's marching in the same direction. And lastly is, when you're at that stage, when you're raising capital, preparing for that round of capital, you should be able to show what items you've put in place to mitigate risk, right? How are you going to assure your investors that you are going to be less risky? So finding that partner that can actually help you protect what those risks are, and having the backing. And so as you can see, HR just kind of flows throughout, and if the need is for the case is to downsize, we're there too. Again, protecting and helping the employees navigate through the changes, the growth, and the ebb and flow of companies.
So, in terms of when you bring the right people in, let's kind of talk a little bit about stages of the company. So let's start off with, you're launching a company. There are going to be a lot of people in the audience today who are launching a company. When is kind of the right time to bring, I'd like to talk a little bit about giving guidance in terms of when is the right time, and what do you look to bring in during that very early launch phase in terms of the different services that you provide. Maybe Ghazenfer, you can start. So we're talking now about, you're getting ready to launch, from a technology perspective, what should a launching company be looking at, making sure they bring in early on to be ready for successes that come later as they need to scale?
Okay, so yeah, I'll talk about that, but I also want to comment on the previous silo comment that I think
Yeah.
I was missed on that. So I echo with the other participant on those. Definitely, that's needed. From a technology perspective, we work with multiple things where that overlap happens. So software licenses, that's very critical. So you will have, you will see like developers creating, whether it's MIT license or any of the other Apache or many of those licenses, those could have a different impact. In fact, in one of the previous startups that I worked, we noticed that before, way later, and then it caused, I mean, it costed a lot company to change how you license it, because if it's an OEM product, suddenly you can only have a different types of license. The other, you have to disclose the source code. Similarly, the marketing strategies, different sales strategies, a lot of those things will have an impact on how you are doing the development, or vice versa. You could be overstepping on some of the patents or trademark. So there are a lot, and there are ways and strategies to go around. So while we are working with these, obviously, we're not specifically recommending where, but we do identify those and notify the customer like they should be talking to an accountant or lawyer for these specific scenarios, because that could have a significant impact as you grow. Usually those problems are identified later on, and then it's pretty late and you're spending a lot of money on those. The next topic, you're asking about the technology as you're growing.
Yeah, during the launch phase, how much should people be focused on, and what sort of scalable platforms should they be thinking about from just a technology perspective during their launch phase?
So yeah, that's an interesting question, because it's a double-edged sword. Like in one ways, you want to build a really scalable, solid product, so you don't have to redo the work. On the other hand, you don't want to spend a lot of money because things could change, and you don't have a deep pockets. So you have to come up with the right way. There could be different strategies that you can apply, and this is part of a couple of the recent blogs that we wrote, like how you can take advantage of different strategies that could help you do. For example, you don't have to build the whole product. You could be building maybe a certain pieces of the product, maybe certain things you may build manually, or integrate initially with other pieces, and once you validate the customer, then build the whole product. So there are many strategies that could be adapted, and there are many success stories where we have seen companies have used these strategies to build quickly. So avoid building everything yourself. That's the main lesson, I would say. Try to, if you could use early on any other integration options so that you can launch your application quickly. The sooner you launch it, the sooner you're in the market, is opportunity cost. You want to take advantage of that.
Thanks. Mark, do you?
Sure. Yeah, I'll jump in.
What would you advise clients who are talking to you about when is too early or when is too late to have brought in the kind of expertise you offer?
Well, again, when we talk about return on sacrifice, getting set up the right way at the beginning actually really matters. Usually legal has the lead on this, and accounting supports, but the structure you choose with the understanding of what you want to do with your business is really, really important, and can save tax. And there's a variety of things that really matter that you're not going to know about without good service providers. You do want to get on a basic accounting system right away. Get off an Excel spreadsheet. They're not expensive. Usually we recommend QuickBooks Online or Xero if you are on the international front. As soon as you can, you want to get out of the bookkeeping and accounting business. It's just not added value, but it has to be done. You don't have your numbers correct. There's no trust with the investors. Most companies need money from investors, so it's like it's binary. Either you're good enough to get the money or not. So you've got to get the numbers right. So sometimes folks can't afford to do it right away, but as soon as you possibly can, you should sort of delegate that bookkeeping and numbers so that you can focus on product market fit and growing your business. And then the last thing I'll just say is try to set up a budget, even if it's rudimentary, and start to, as best you can manage against a budget. It's amazing how just that little discipline will help you focus and not overspend. And if you have a target for something, it's amazing how if you have a budget or a target, you're likely to meet it. And if you don't have a goal or target, sales can be 3 months late, where you'd start much earlier if you had a target number.
Yeah, we see kind of something very similar. As an entrepreneur, as Mark said, you're always balancing every dollar you have like 5 different uses for that dollar. And so when anything that you're spending during that stage is so critical, and kind of knowing where it's okay to pull back and wait a little bit further is a really important balance that entrepreneurs go through during the early stages. I think on the legal side, the areas that are really important to try to get right out of the gate are making sure you're setting up the right structure. Should you have set up an LLC, or did it make more sense to set up a C Corp right away based on things that are happening, so you don't have to convert fairly soon after setting up your LLC. I think it's important to make sure that all of the founders' stock is issued properly. And if you have multiple founders, you want to make sure that there's potentially reverse vesting shares, or shares that are vesting, so that you don't have a situation where 3 people found a company and then 3 months later, one founder for life or any other reasons leaves with a third of the company. And we kind of deal with that a lot. So kind of making sure you've thought through with multiple founders how that's dealt with. Making sure that, if you've brought in some early friends and family money, that's properly dealt with. And then also IP is another really important one to invest in at the beginning. So you may have intellectual property that's sitting in individuals, in the different founders, and making sure all of that is transferred to the companies. So there are some things that you'll come up with that make sense in a very tight budget world, which all startups are in, to delay a little bit. But there are also certainly key ones, like some of those that you want to just make sure. It's so much more expensive and time consuming if you get some of those wrong during the very early startup phase. Tanya, from your perspective, just the launch phase on the HR side, maybe you can talk a little bit about, I know there's a lot of issues about classification, and is somebody actually an employee, or are they an independent contractor, and some of the things that are kind of common pitfalls if you don't get guidance at the very beginning.
You know what? This is a great topic here when it comes to HR and technology, right? And when you talk about timing, technology is there to increase efficiency, to increase effectiveness. And so when it comes to when is the right time to bring technology in your business, I would say when you actually really have that first employee. Now, what usually happens with startups is that you bring on all this back office as you need it, right? So you bring on your employee, then you add on, you add payroll. Something else happens, you add the next thing. Then you need, to offer retirement, because now you're in a place where you can offer retirement. You bring in a 401k, service and technology. Next thing you know, you have all these different technologies, and you're in the middle of it, connecting this, acting as the middle person, translating data so that it works on the other side. So just laying it out there, that's usually what happens with startups. And when I come and speak with business owners, that's usually what I hear the most and what I hear often. We have these technologies that are operating in silos. It's not efficient. It's not talking, and therefore there's so many errors. So the right timing is when you do have that employee, think long term, and if there's a way that you can minimize having multiple technology, that's always, if you can streamline your technology, that's always the right approach. At Insperity, we've spent billions building, maintaining, and improving our own technology, specifically the one that supports our PO solution, which is the platform thousands of America's best small businesses are on. It's seamless. There's all this functionality, and along the lines of ensuring that you're spending less on administrative work and really focusing on areas that can actually help you make more money. It's also giving this ability to the employees, giving the employees the ability to be self-sufficient, to have information at the tip of their hands. Because when you're a startup, let's be honest, you don't have many people in the back office supporting all your employees. There's only one of you, 2, 3, 4 of you as you start to grow. So you want to make sure that everybody can move forward without depending on another person's availability. That being said, I also want to point out there's so many in the market out there for this technology-only solution when it comes to HR. I will say this, people are complex, people have needs, and the management of people and meeting their needs just can't be left to technology.
Great, thank you. In terms, we've kind of talked about the launch, another area that, another milestone in a company's life cycle is going out and raising financing and raising rounds of financing. I think I'd like to now turn a little bit to how working and partnering with your clients as a provider in your different areas of specialty, you help de-risk the fundraising process and kind of increase the likelihood that you'll have a successful process, and how maybe work that you do can help them prepare for that financing process. So I'd like to kind of turn now to working with clients to this really important part of building a company, which is raising capital.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start with that one. Again, I think this is a major mission, is to improve the probability of success of getting funding, because otherwise you can't move forward. So as I mentioned earlier, the numbers need to be right and trusted. We can put our brand behind a client in terms of being accurate in their numbers and being disciplined as an entrepreneur. We also have communication modules for investors that give them structure and framework where they can communicate on a monthly basis. So when they're going out for money, they know the numbers are right, and they know they're going to get transparent communication, and it's going to come on a regular time frame. And they know that there's technology that's going to look for challenges and mistakes. And then beyond that, we do help them with their forecasts for investors. We do help them with their decks, and we do help them with connectivity, and helping them get more at bats with high quality materials.
Great, thank you, Mark. Ghazenfer or Tanya, how do you guys kind of step in during fundraising processes to help your clients as a partner of theirs increase the likelihood of a successful fundraising process?
So in our case, it's usually, there are two different types of customers that we deal with. In one case, if we are already helping that customer, obviously we work with the customer to provide them all the data that they need for the investment. We provide all the details of different open source, different certifications, different things that we are able to provide. However, obviously, as part of the investment fundraising, they also need having a core team, because if you don't have a team and if you outsource everything to a third party, that's also a risk for tech companies, because that actually hinders. So this is where we suggest, like, you have to have your own CTO, and our team work with your team. That's a better scenario. Second option, one of the service we offer is a software assessment service. So for any companies who are building, we do the due diligence, we generate the report each and every, we have like 20 different metrics that we measure in terms of security, Trojans, processes, many of the things where we generate a comprehensive report. It's more of a third-party report by us, by reviewing your software. So whether it's being done by internal team or another third party, we come in as a third party and do the assessment of the application. So that way it's a validation or a report that will tell like what is in compliance, what needs to be improved, and where things are currently.
And Tanya, thank you, Ghazenfer. Tanya, I know that a big part of due diligence when people are doing due diligence during an investment is looking at around all of the HR related.
There's so many. There's so many.
Side of the business. You know, how does being kind of working with you guys help people be ready for and organized for the due diligence process?
You know what? Nobody starts a business to want to be a professional employer. That's just not really, that's not the goal. But when you talk about risk, there is plenty in the world of HR. I mean, by the time you have an employee, even just from the interview stage, all the things you cannot ask and you could ask, by the time you pay them, processing payroll taxes properly, all these benefit policies you own, the health insurance, the 401k, there's a whole lot of regulations that revolve around this. And then we haven't even touched employee relations yet, right? So truly it's finding that model that transfers a lot of the risk to someone else, offboarding, pushing that risk. And that's really why we've been very successful doing what we do at Insperity. We bring that protection to small businesses. We bring that level of protection, that backing that, again, usually is not afforded by small businesses. I've said this, I'm trying to remember where I spoke last, but I've said this too. You know, small businesses have the same concerns as large businesses. It's the typical taxation, healthcare, and regulation. And at the same time, the disadvantage for small business and for startups specifically is that you just don't have the resources that the large companies have. So, that's our value proposition to our clients and to prospecting startups is, how do we do that? How do we remove all that risk that goes to being an employer, give you that buying power so that you can focus on, the strategic side of business so you can grow your business. I'm happy to help. There's a whole lot of interesting conversation behind that. I'm going to, put here in the chat my email address and, reach out to me. No situation is the same. So I'm happy to spend some time and discuss what your plans are.
Great, and I'll ask each of our panelists today to just put their information into the chat. So we've come to the end of our hour, and I really want to thank Tanya and Ghazenfer and Mark for a great panel today and sharing information about how choosing the right service provider who can really act as a partner can increase your chances of success. And with that, I'll hand it back to Rachel.
Thank you so much, Anthony, Tanya, Mark, and Ghazenfer for having this conversation, as partners are really crucial for any entrepreneur and startup to have success as they're growing. I want to say another thank you for being our title sponsors this year. We're so grateful and so thankful to have you because of you, is the ability for us to go on completely virtual this week, 5 full days, 100 sessions, 200 plus speakers, and 4,000 attendees. So thank you again. Next, powered by Shulman, Rodgers, Insperity, Wiz, and Technology Rivers. We truly could not do this without your support. For all the attendees, feel free to go on Attendify. You're able to look at their profiles as well as see some promotions that they're putting out together for exclusive to the DC Startup Week community. We have 2 upcoming things coming at 1 o'clock. Right now, we're going into a coffee chat and mastermind. This is the last networking session of DC Startup Week, so don't miss out on this networking. We have some great activities. Join for this 1 to 2 p.m. And then at 2 p.m. we kick off our final and closing pitch competition. 5 startups are going to be battling it out for a cash and prizes, top judges, top startups. So don't miss out. So I'll see you guys hopefully at the 1 o'clock and the 2 o'clock. So thank you again. See everyone soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you all.